I'm here.
Welcome, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you please start.
Okay, we'll start right now. So, good morning. Welcome you all to this third online webinar organized by Tripura University Alumni Association. And today's topic is the challenges of online education in India. On behalf of the Alumni Association, I welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Ganga Prasad Prasin, who is also chief guest of this program. So, despite of his busy schedule, Sir has joined this program. We are very thankful to him, and he is encouraging us to arrange different activities. So, thank you, sir, for your participation and encouragement. I also welcome today's speaker, Professor Ram Ramaswamy. He is a fellow of Indian National Science Academy and a professor of IIT Delhi. He was also ex Vice Chancellor of Hyderabad University, and under his leadership, they formed discussion forum for online teaching and they arrange panel discussions and a lot of programs to highlight different issues related to online teaching. So, thank you very much, sir, for kindly accepting our invitation. I also welcome our registered sir, Dr. Deepak Sharma, who is also the special guest of this program. So, thank you, sir, for joining with us. I also welcome Professor S. Mujumdar, who is the president of Tripura University Alumni Association, and also all the members of Alumni Association, students, teachers, faculty members, non-teaching staffs from this university, and also participants from outside this university. I welcome you all, and on behalf of the Alumni Associations, I would like to inform you that we are organizing a series of program, and this is a third webinar in this webinar series. With this, I welcome you once again. Thank you for your participation. So now I request our registered sir, Dr. Deepak Sharma, to say a few words in this program. Sir, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Syed Hussain, for making us a part of this wonderful initiative of yours to organize an online webinar on the challenges of online education in India, and for arranging such a wonderful speaker as Professor Ram Ramaswamy for the benefit of the students of Tripura University. It's indeed a wonderful initiative, and on behalf of the Tripura University, I welcome Professor Ramaswamy to this webinar. Indeed, the society is changing radically, and the changes are being brought about by the information and communication technology, and we see that with the pace that society is changing, and our work methodologies are changing, our offices are changing, work scenarios are changing. So indeed we see that after 5 years the scenario is completely transformed. For example, 10 years ago, if there was an emphasis on paper and file keeping, now it is it is a move towards a paperless office. In the changed circumstances, the role of universities has also changed. Universities are no longer just the service provider industries where they just impart learning and ensure a quality teaching to the learners that they join. We are now a manufacturing industries. We are known by the products that we produce for the market. That is the most challenging role that that we face today, and this is the most potent challenge that we face today. In the changed circumstances, it is expected from the universities that we should have a, a continuous, a perpetual, and a symbiotic relationship with our students. Once a student joins us, our relationship with him or her does not cease to as soon as he passes out from the students from the university. Rather, the relationship continues. We are supposed to keep a record of the students' progression. Students that after passing out, they take the nomenclature alumni. Alumni has to maintain a relationship with the university, and the relationship between university and alumni becomes a symbiotic relationship. It is a mutual benefit. As students grow professionally, we are benefited, and as our students grow professionally, universities also grow. So it is such kind of relationship that we are supposed to maintain with our students. Our relationship with them does not just continue just after the conclusion of convocation and after the award of degree. So under such scenario, it is welcome on the part that Tripura University Alumni Association is continuing its association with the university, is organizing wonderful significant programs for the students, and in the process, both are maintaining ties. So with these words, I welcome Professor Ramaswamy, and before that, I would like our Vice Chancellor, sir, to say a few words about the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your nice words regarding our activity and also suggestions. We will take care of these issues. So now I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to say a few words. Sir, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Syed Arshad Hussain. Professor Swapan Majumdar, President, Tripura University Alumni Association. Dr. Syed Arshad Hussain, Secretary, Tripura University Alumni Association. Other members, Professor R.K. Nath, Professor Ashish Nath, Professor Chinmoy Roy, Professor Alak Bhattacharya, Dr. A. Salim Saha, Dr. Shyamal Devnath, Dr. Anirban Guha, Dr. Nirmal Das, Dr. Bimal Devnath, Dr. Marin Bhaumik, Dr. Anjana Kalai, Dr. Parnab Dhar, Mr. Surajit Sarkar, Mr. Brajagopal Das, and many more alumni who are associated with this webinar and who have actively participated in such alumni program. I convey my greetings to all of you. I will discuss 2 points in this webinar. That is, the main theme of today's topic is the challenge of online education in India. But before I come to the topic, I would like to say a few lines about the role of alumni association for the development of any university. As rightly said by Dr. Deepak Sharma, our registrar, that alumni are very important component of university. Even after they complete their education and they go and settle down in different parts of India and abroad, they do not forget their university where they have studied, from where they got their degree. So it is also an obligation on the part of the alumni to do something for the institution, for the university, for the college, where they have studied, from where they have earned knowledge, and on the basis of that knowledge, that qualification, that degree, now they are well settled in different parts of India and abroad. Therefore, it is the role of the alumni also to do something for the university. Yes, we have studied in different colleges, different university. Now we are working in Tripura University and different other institutions in Northeast India and also beyond India, even in abroad also. But we sometimes meet together, discuss together, and do something for the benefit of our alma mater, where we have studied, where we have enjoyed, where we have passed, where we spent many precious years of our life. Therefore, I wish that our alumni, though they are working in different places, come together, meet together, and do something for the welfare, for the development of Tripura University. In all activities like NEC assessment, UGC guideline, there is a mention about the alumni. How many students have passed? What are the degrees they have earned from university? Where are they settled? What is their placement? All those things we need to report to the funding agency, to other agencies like NEC, etc., etc. Therefore, we want to update the data of alumni who have studied in Tripura University. So, in this connection, I consider that the role of alumni association is very, very important. I wish that every year, when result of master degree, when PhD degree is completed, the alumni association should maintain a record of the student, their address, their mobile number, their email ID, so that we made in touch with them. And also, there are alumni who have settled, in a very, very better position in different parts of India and abroad. So they can also contribute something for the development of Tripura University. So I wish that maybe in February 1st or 2nd week, there should be a meeting of the alumni of Tripura University, and we will find out some ways and means, some ideas which will certainly contribute for the benefit of Tripura University. So I consider alumni, though they are former students, but still they are our students, because students are our asset. If our students are well settled in different profession, then we feel very happy and proud. Therefore, I always want to keep in touch with the alumni, with the former student who have passed different degrees and diploma and even PhD degree from Tripura University. Therefore, I thank the alumni for organizing this very, very wonderful program. And now coming to the topic of today's online, that is the challenges of online education in India. And we have invited Professor Ram Ramaswamy, who is a great scientist, who was ex-Vice Chancellor of University of Hyderabad. Sir, I, on behalf of Tripura University, on behalf of Alumni Association of Tripura University, and on my own behalf, I extend very warm welcome to you, sir. And I thank you very much for sparing your time, and you will be sharing your views on online education. Yes, sir. During this lockdown period, we in universities, college, and even in school also, we have been teaching through online mode only. So I consider this lockdown period as a blessing in disguise, because we are able to impart our knowledge, our education to our students through online. And not only that, even we have conducted our exam also through online mode. The results have been declared, and degrees and diploma have been distributed among the students who have passed their exam through online education also. But there are some challenges. Yes, we'll be hearing many ideas from our Honorable Professor Ramaswamy. But before that, I would also like to share that, yes, we are planning for online education. We have been doing, but still we have many difficulties like infrastructure. For imparting online education, we need those components like smart board, smart classroom, inbuilt computer, camera, very, very regular and strong internet connection. With this only, we can impart, we can teach through online education. But in Northeast India, even in Tripura also, we do not have a very powerful or uninterrupted internet connection. Therefore, sometimes while teaching also, while discussing also, even on Google Meet also, we are disturbed, we are disconnected because of poor internet connection. And also, our infrastructure is not that much good or advanced, but still we are trying. In Tripura University also, we are trying to provide a smart classroom to each and every department. We have already started working on this line. And near future, we will be able to impart online education successfully. Apart from this, in New Education Policy 2020, Government of India has decided to increase enrollment ratio, that is gross enrollment ratio, up to at least 50%. So if we want to impart education to more and more number of students, all of them cannot be accommodated in the classroom. Say, for example, the seating capacity of one classroom may be 50, 60, 70 or 100. And there may be many applicants, many students who want to do that master degree course. So for those applications, those candidates who are unable to take admission physically, who are unable to come to university physically, for them, we have to do online classes also. So I believe that in near future, we shall be having parallel classes. One batch will be sitting in front of us in the classroom. Another batch of students will be sitting in their house through online mode. So if we adopt this technology only, then only we shall be able to increase our gross enrollment ratio as provided in the New Education Policy 2020, which we shall be implementing maybe after 2 years, 3 years, but we have to work on this. Therefore, if we make our online education very strong, then we can give education to many, many students who are unable to come to classroom physically, and this will save their time, money, and energy also. So in future, there is no other way, but we have to strengthen our mode of online education so that we shall be able to achieve the target of gross enrollment ratio, which is provided in the New Education Policy 2020. So these are some of the important challenges. Main thing is infrastructure. Once our infrastructure is ready, is strong, then I believe that we shall be able to provide online education for different subjects. UGC has already prepared syllabi for different course. It is in their portal, and many of our students are taking advantage out of this also. In future also, we shall be planning many online courses. I'll not talk much about this because our honorable speaker, Professor Ramaswamy, is there, who will guide us on different aspects of online education. So with these few words, once again, I welcome Professor Ramaswamy, and I have great pleasure in inaugurating this online, webinar on the topic, the challenges of online education in India. Thank you and namaskar, Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your encouraging, inviting words, and of course, we will follow your guideline. So there is a small announcement. I request all the participants, except dignitaries, to mute your microphone and switch off your video. This will help us to organize this session in a nice way. Hope you will cooperate. So now I request our chairman, Professor S. Majumdar, to introduce today's speaker and conduct this program. Shobanda, please.
Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Hussain, and very good morning to you all. I thank Tripura University Alumni Association for organizing an webinar on such an important topics on online education in India. And we, the Tripura University Alumni Association, and also being a member, I feel extremely happy that today we have Professor Ram Ramaswamy with us, who is an eminent scientist, educationalist, scholars of the country. And also I feel extremely happy and honored that I am chairing a session where a person like Professor Ramaswamy will share his views and his ideas with us. Actually, Professor Ramaswamy don't need to introduction, I believe. But it is a customary to introduce any speaker before an audience. I am just giving some introduction about Professor Ramaswamy. At present, he is a retired professor, and he retired from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And he served actually JNU for the last more than 30 years in the School of Physical Science and the School of Computational and Interrogative Science. And before joining JNU, he served Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, for 3 years. And between 2011 to 2015, he served as Vice Chancellor of the University of Hyderabad. And at present, he is a visiting professor at the Department of Chemistry, IIT, Delhi. Professor Ramaswamy is educated from Madras University and also IIT Kanpur and then Princeton University, USA. And his research interest is theoretical chemistry, statistical physics, molecular dynamics, computational and system biology. So very vast areas, chemistry to physics and biology. And so you can imagine what are the area he is working. He is author of more than 200 peer-reviewed publications and edited many books and chapters, conference proceedings. And also he mentored more than 35 PhD students during his position in Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, JNU, University of Hyderabad, and now at IIT Delhi. He is also elected fellow of the different academics, like World Academy of Science, Indian National Science Academy, and Indian Academy of Science, Bangalore. And also he served, this is very important, he served the president of the Indian Academy of Science during the 2016 to 2018. So I understand that all of you are eagerly waiting for listening from Professor Ramaswamy. And this topic is challenges on online education in India. And with this, just I request Professor Ramaswamy, please enlighten us and about you, share your knowledge and ideas. So Professor Ramaswamy, please, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mazumdar, and thank you, Mr. Vice Chancellor, Mr. Registrar, and Arshad for this invitation. I'm very pleased to be able to talk to all of you. And let me start by confessing that I would much rather have come and talk to you in person, although then a topic like today's topic would not be very relevant. Perhaps in the future it will be, but one does miss the contact. The topic like challenges of online education in India today is something on which all of us are almost all experts. So let me start by presenting my screen. Just a second. Yeah. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. So the title of my talk is The Challenges of Online Education in India, or a subtitle really is, how has this pandemic changed the academic landscape? It's not going to be a long talk for reasons that we are all familiar with. There is by now considerable webinar fatigue in our country. But what I will try to do is to talk about how the online scenario in India has changed before and after the pandemic. Try to give you some impressions of what has happened in education on online teaching, what we can learn from it, and especially, as the Vice Chancellor already pointed out, the implications for the future are quite considerable. The talk actually has a lot of material which is meant for, meant to be used later on. So I will be sharing my slides with all of you. And even if I don't cover everything that's on the slides, it's going to be there available. You've already heard a little about this DFOT, or the Discussion Forum for Online Teaching, which is a community effort for supporting online teaching that was started a few months ago. And I will talk a little about that and what we have learned. Okay, so that's the virus that has changed all of us, and there is probably not a single person in the world who has not either seen a picture like this or has had enough news about it. This virus has changed humanity in less than a year. March 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 to be a pandemic. And so far, the total number of cases that have occurred worldwide are about 95 million. And 2 million people have died so far. In India, the proportions are much lower compared to our population. We seem to have had about 11 million cases and 1.5 lakhs of deaths. All these numbers are approximate, but they are not bad. They're not totally incorrect. So this tells you that the disease is really a pandemic and something that even today is an important thing. I just got this data from 2 days ago in preparation for today's talk, so the numbers are actually accurate. Now, like most sectors in our country, the education sector was caught completely unawares. In the beginning of January, when semester started, we were going on as business as usual, and by March, we were completely online. Now, online education is not something very new. It has been around in one form or the other since the 1990s. There's a very famous university called the University of Phoenix, which has been giving degrees, online degrees, since 1990 something, all right? But even before the pandemic, across the world, educationists and policymakers had not been very warm to the idea of online education. And it wasn't just a question of money, it is a question of the nature of education. And online education, and this is something for us to worry a little about, because we are now in a situation where online education is the norm. As we go into the future, we are certain to see. This is my phone, my noise.
Monish, please unmute your microphone. Monish.
Is this better now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. See, online education, one of the things that we think about, and the Vice Chancellor already pointed out, is that it helps us to increase the gross enrollment ratio of the GER. And one of the reasons we need to increase the GER is to bring everybody into a level where they are educated. And we think of this as a way of reducing socioeconomic differences. We think of this in our country particularly of addressing caste differences, gender differences, and so on. But even in 2019, that is about 2 years ago, there was a report in this magazine called Inside Higher Ed saying that online education has not lived up to its potential, and it actually increases the gaps in socioeconomic and racial dimensions while failing to be more affordable than traditional courses. I think that's going to change now as we go on in the future, but we need to also realize that in our country, online education had been strongly supported in the past. There are, when talking of 2015, when this government took charge, so to speak, this program called Swayam was in fact announced by the then Education Minister, Smriti Irani. This was to build up on NPTEL and so on and so forth. But a number of different efforts had been going on in India for a long time now, at least 10 years. Even before March of 2020, there was, in addition to NPTEL, there was Swayam Prabha, there were many MOOCs, massive open online courses that existed from inside India as well as from outside India, and these were all available. This abrupt transition that all of us went through and had one important aspect. Swayam was optional and it depended on one's level of resources. Parts of our country do not have a very strong internet connectivity. In addition to the northeastern states, areas like Kashmir have got, Kashmir even today has only 2G connectivity. So ability to use things like NPTEL and the different things on Swayam were optional. Today, of course, as all of you, as all of us realize, online teaching is compulsory. And in a sense, all of us have become experts, because there's no point in having a great expert outside who's going to come and lecture your class if your internet connectivity is so low that you can't have the talk going on. All right, and we are seeing this infrastructure is extremely important, and finance is also extremely important. And today, actually, we are all on our own. Now, there are vaccines for the disease, but these are really early days. In India, we have 2 vaccines, Covaxin and Covishield, but delivering to the total population is going to be really tricky. As we are already realizing, it's just been a week since the rollout, less than a week since the rollout, but getting everybody vaccinated is going to be tricky. And because asymptomatic cases are more than the symptomatic ones, we're going to have to isolate. The point that I'm trying to make is very simple. It's going to be difficult for us to open very soon, and most courses are still being delivered in the online mode. In all our universities, and I'm sure that Tripura University is no exception, only research scholars and those who need to be in laboratories are being permitted on campus. I can say that from local experience over here, even in IIT, very few students are back. Now, so far, the experience with online classes has been mixed, and it depends on whom you talk to. Even in the best institutions, right, we may have very good internet at IIT over here, for example, but our students are at home. And not all students have got equal access to the internet, depending on where they live, depending on their socioeconomic condition, and depending on other factors like whether they have power or not. So in any class, between 20 to 40% of the students are not able to attend in real time, and we are forced to go to recorded lectures in one way or the other. I can speak from personal experience, and I'm sure all of you who are teaching or attending classes know this to be true. We are simply not able to attend in real time, and so we have to rely on recorded lectures. Now, as we know, digital access in the whole country is very patchy. And it's, depending on where you look at the statistics, only 8% of the homes with students in the homes have got a reliable computer plus internet connections, that is power and a good computer and so on and so forth. And there are big differences in rural versus urban, and in urban, metro versus non-metro, gender differences, economic differences, all these play a role. Most teachers, you will find, are not enthusiastic, but we don't have a choice right now. And I mean, considering that I am retired, I can also assert that there is a generation gap. Most of teachers of my generation did not learn to teach in any other mode except or using a blackboard. And this makes it a little difficult to give online classes when you're not comfortable with the equipment. All right. Now, one of the things that I have felt for a long time is that education is not an individual's activity. It is not just about a single teacher or even a single institution. It is the community's expression of how to raise our own community up. We try, therefore, to reach as many people as possible. Governments will say things like GER, but actually what we really want is that everybody should get educated. And it is one of the few ways we know of reducing social inequalities, and we therefore need discussion, debate, we need face-to-face interaction, because this is a social activity. In addition to this general rule that education is community-based, every subject has its own different ways of being taught. Some subjects need a lot of discussion, some need a lot of blackboard work, some need laboratory work, and we all depend on each other. This interaction between teacher and student, all these are fundamental to the process of teaching. And this is what we have lost to some extent in this abrupt transition online. And this is what we have to somehow regain. And how do we regain this online? It's good to remember a nice quote from John Donne a few hundred years ago, several centuries ago, who says that no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, and therefore, this is a well-known quote, so I will not read it. Basically, we are all connected. Keeping this in mind, Professor Madhurima of the Central University of Tamil Nadu and I started this discussion forum for online teaching, which is a completely voluntary organization, is probably too much to say for it. It is just people coming together to talk about what are the problems of online teaching. Now, since August 2020, we've been trying to put together all sorts of material that is useful for teaching in this one website. It's a Google page and the links are all given. It's not difficult to find. And most importantly, we've been having a whole lot of discussion forums, panel discussions, where we've tried to bring teachers from all over the country. And here's a map showing you where all we've had people coming from. So far, we haven't had someone from Tripura University, but please be rest assured, we will be approaching you all because there are many topics to discuss. We've learned a lot, and we've been having the following panel discussions: how to engage students. Every teacher will tell you that this is a big problem. How do you keep students, interested in your teaching? How do you evaluate? You can hold exams and do things, but what is the most effective way of evaluating classes? What is the role of administration? See, today, I'm glad to note that the Vice Chancellor is very sensitive to the needs of the online teacher. When we started 6 months ago, things were not as clear. Many people were not very sure of what to do, and I'll discuss about some of these things. And different subjects have got different problems, as I already mentioned. How do you teach humanities, philosophy, mathematics, etc.? How do you have labs? How do you teach fine arts? Important areas that we've also looked at are on persons with disabilities. You see, people with disabilities require coming to a classroom and talking to their peers and interacting with people. This has been completely lost in the online mode, leading to a lot of stress. Last Sunday we discussed, how counseling is so important. And then we've also had hands-on sessions on Moodle, Google Meet, on various things like Teams softwares, different softwares for teaching as well as for examining. There's a very well-known examination software called Examiner. After we had a panel discussion on university administration, one of the participants said, India's diversity is once again displayed in yesterday's discussion. There's so much variation in our experience of higher learning and evaluation, and I'm sure that Tripura University's experience is not the same as IIT Delhi, but not just that. We had a survey about teachers from all across the country, and I'd just like to share a few things with you, which you already know, but it's worth pointing out. Most teachers use laptops. So when we are teaching online, we've replaced the classroom by a laptop. And if not a laptop, occasionally we might even use a phone or something like that, but primarily a laptop or a desktop. Very few teachers in India, and I'm now talking about the bulk of teachers in colleges and small and smaller organizations. Very few have got tablets which touch screens that enable writing. Right? That is changing now as we are going along, but this is a fact. On the other hand, most students are attending classes using mobile phones. So the entire classroom, the whole size of the class, in the teacher's mind has gone to a laptop, but in the student's mind, it has gone to a cell phone. This immediately changes the scale of how one is to see education. It's cost a lot of money because this money is not underwritten by anybody else. Teachers have had to buy data, internet, laptops, desktops, and when you're a teacher of mathematics or of theoretical subjects, you need a stylus and a tablet for writing. All this has to be borne by the teacher. Data is also something that has to be borne by the student and the family of the student. So this has been a fairly expensive proposition. We're used to it now because it's been 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, whatever, but one shouldn't neglect that. Students want to come to class. They are anxious to get their degrees. As the Vice Chancellor already pointed out, the purpose of education has changed and students are anxious to get their education, get their degrees and move on. But 25% of them may lose connection during the class. Now, we summarized all this. Professor Madhurima and I have written an article in the Telegraph, and the link is given over there. But there are many other things that we asked our teachers, and the main thing that I would like to sort of address or record over here is that the commitment to teaching and learning is very high. And teachers have done some incredible things to make sure that their classes are going on in time. The example that I remember most is that somebody actually was not, at their hometown, they were not able to get good internet. So they went to the closest big town so that they could go there and deliver classes. Now, this is a huge expense for a middle class or a lower middle class person. And I was amazed to find that there are teachers who have done this. With all this, we also learned that there are silver linings to the move online. In principle, online or the e-classroom or online classroom is more inclusive. Larger classes can be admitted and taught, improving your GER. The class can be very individual. Some students can go faster, some can go slower. That is, the self-pacing is possible over here, which therefore allows smarter students to move faster, students who need more help to seek more help. This is a benefit. It's an individualized classroom in principle. Pedagogy can be experimented with, and you can have flipped lectures, you can have multiple sources of inputs, all sorts of things that you can think about, which a regular classroom cannot always give you that freedom to experiment. This is something that, you know, since we are in a problematic situation, you can try to do things. An important thing for given our country and its diversity in social groups is that because the e-classroom is anonymous in some sense, it's easier for some students to speak up and communicate with the teacher. And usually it is students from disadvantaged groups who have noted this. If you were to do a SWOT analysis to look at the strengths and weaknesses or the opportunities and the threats of this online teaching, the strength really is that you know, we are all committed to teaching and learning. The weakness is obvious. It was a problem for most people, and there was a digital divide, but now this is changing a little. There are opportunities that are available to all of us. I mean, one most obvious one is that I am able to have a lecture with all of you colleagues in Agartala. And this, you know, my only knowledge of Agartala so far was, you know, a stop on flying from Calcutta to Silchar or something like that. And this ability to go across huge distances in space is one opportunity. There are so many others, all right? It gives us a chance to actually rethink of the purpose of education. So I'll come to that later. The biggest threat is that the teacher is not some god anymore, right? I mean, already I think the internet had removed the centrality of the teacher, but online teaching, the fact that that you have to address the asynchronous mode, you receive your lectures most often in an asynchronous manner, and that there are many, many experts for the same topic all over the world. If you don't understand what your teacher is saying, just go to YouTube and find out. And in some, you know, maybe there are some Instagram pages or whatever, you know, so the centrality of the teacher is removed. Now, we need a lot of support for online teaching, psychological, technological, and pedagogical. Teaching online is a new kind, a new style, because if it is once in a while, it is one thing, but if it is all the time, we realize that classes need to be shorter. We don't need to teach so much. You need to figure out what exactly to teach and let the students figure out more on their own. The focus has to be on the style of teaching and not on, you know, completing every topic. If you had to complete every topic in an online course, it could take much, much longer. And the online teaching is a public document. My lecture after today is going to be on either YouTube or in some form. I've got to be a little worried about being original. Many people have worried about it. Already last year, there was an article in Nature saying what are some tips and techniques for online teaching. I'm not going to cover this because this is not about how to teach online, but I just want to show this picture of this poor teacher, well, poor or not, I don't know, but this teacher is teaching an empty classroom in a traditional mode and trying to record his lecture and so on and so forth. But there are certain tips of how to do this, right? In our country, the digital divide is huge. Every institution is impacted by it. In some places, we have good internet in the institution, but the students are, receiving the lectures at home, and many teachers are teaching from home. I have come here today to my office mostly because I have reliable internet here. If I was doing this from home, my internet is very patchy, and I'm talking from Delhi. Institutions have given their teachers devices and the internet connectivity, others have not. And the effectiveness of your class, the quality of your teaching now depends on indirectly on the quality of the access that you have to digital media. So this is an important thing. One matter that I think we all need to worry about a little more is that this is a stressful time. It's not just that you went from face-to-face classes to an online medium. Students are also a little worried about their future. All of us are worried about our future, not just about whether we're going to, as one is now getting used to saying, it's not about whether we will get COVID or not. It's almost a question of when are you going to get COVID, because it is a pandemic. So that is one worry. But the other worry is really about the changing scenario and the changed landscape, not just of education, but of everything in this in the country. So there is a lot of stress, and one has to remember as a teacher that our students are at home. The other day I was giving an examination, which was an oral exam, and there was a lot of noise in the background of that particular student's environment. And when I asked that student to go and move into a place where there would be less noise, it was pointed out to me that the student lived in a joint family and there was no other place. So home environments are not always conducive for study. We need to be a little careful about that. We need to, as I already said, teach less, but give a little more time, because a student, the teacher has to only deliver one course typically, or maybe 2 courses at most. But a student sometimes has to take 4 or 5 courses, and morning to evening looking at a phone, I don't know, it can be very stressful. An aspect which has not been talked about too much, but needs to be realized, is that gender plays a role. Women typically have less access to electronic facilities and more responsibilities in home. This is something that we need to realize, that women students sometimes have to do homework, housework, in addition to their schoolwork or classwork. So, the safe space of the classroom has been lost by many women. Right. Now, here are some general tips which I'm not going to talk about, except, to just point out one thing, and that is that the camera and audio, these are the most important things. So we need to pay some attention to that. And this I will talk about, because online classes in low bandwidth conditions is a problem that all of us have to be sensitive to. And as teachers, it's important to record your lectures and maybe send them, send screenshots of your slides and audio versions of lectures to all our students. I'm not going to cover this in detail, except to also point out one point that I haven't written over here, is that IIT Jammu has actually come up with a software solution for teaching under 2G circumstances, because Jammu and Kashmir, as we all know, has got very poor access to the internet. But this software could be very useful in all other parts of the country, particularly because we don't have reliable 4G everywhere, and 5G only exists in advertisements for the most part. Okay. Now, even after we've all got the vaccine, what is the way ahead? Uh, One of the things that I would like to point out is that in the future, India needs to change. And it needs to change in very many ways. We never need to see a picture like this of people walking home and, what we saw during the pandemic. This virus has, as I said, it's changed some of the landscapes. It has exposed several fault lines in the way in which we've been doing things so far. The government says only science can help India against the coronavirus. Science is helping us, but this can only happen if all sections of society have access to education. So we need to have reforms. Primary and secondary education systems are in need of reform. The new education policy, NEP 2020, the intentions are very good, but many of the recommendations need to be thought about because the policy was written before the pandemic. The policy was written at a time when it was business as usual. And it has not been revised after the events of the last year. The NEP that was accepted by Parliament in July of 2020 was the same NEP that was written in 2019, and it was formulated from 2016 onwards. So we need to really think about how we are going to implement a new education policy, not the new education policy. We need to use technology to reach out all sections of society. There's no way out about this. And I think that it is important for us to ensure that connectivity is improved and that all of us take this as an important goal. Because online education is here to stay. There is no way around it. We are going to have, as the Vice Chancellor also pointed out, maybe blended modes. Maybe there will be some courses to be taught online, some to be taught offline, or some part of some course to be taught offline, with the bulk of it being taught online. This has to become a part of every teacher's skill. There are these MOOCs that are given by third parties outside our given universities. In the past, we've been very, typically we've tended to be very, how does one put it, proprietary about one's lectures. Why? If you have a good lecturer from, Nehu or from Central University of Tamil Nadu or Central University of Punjab, or even from Jadavpur University or from Cuttack, it should be possible for a student to take courses for credit, right? If you do that, then we concentrate about learning and not about delivery. I think we should all learn to teach less. We could move to a lower contact hour per course format, because just having long lectures and large numbers of lectures doesn't ensure anything that people have learnt. And also requiring students to spend 3 years or 4 years or 5 years in a college or university could be replaced by a more practical requirement and assessments that will make the educational process much more flexible. This move online could help us to become more outcome-based and make us do this faster. We've also got to realize, I think, most often in our universities, we see universities as just a little extension of school. So it's always the teacher who is telling the student, talking down to the student. I think we've got to realize that our students are not always downwards. They're at they're equals. In many ways, they are equal participants in the learning process. So learning is a shared responsibility. And I think it's quite all right to demand from students that they play their role. When you demand from people that they be equal partners in an enterprise, then you see that you can win test matches even after having had a dismal performance in the first test of the series. You can come back in such a brilliant way, and that comes from demanding that everybody see this as a shared responsibility and not just the job of the teacher to talk down. Now, beyond classrooms and teaching, there is research. And this is an area where I know that many teachers and alumni, etc., will worry about what happens to research. And here, immediately, I feel, immediately it has not been a very good experience, because guiding students for research is something which is very personal. And the impact of going online has not been good on this. In almost all institutions in our country, 2020 has not been a great year for research, because students were all at home, teachers were all at home, labs were by and large closed, except for those that needed to be open, like biology labs. All right. Some aspects could improve, collaborative research and so on. But I think that we have going to face that, because now money, the economy will be impacted somewhat negatively. The amount of money for education is always a proportion of the GDP. And when the GDP goes down, the absolute amount of money available for education also goes down. So there could be a fallout, especially in research, which is a paradox, because now you need to boost research. We need to put more money, because we only realize that only research, good data, good amount of science, this is the only thing that can improve our situation and raise our society. So indirectly, what I'm appealing to all of us, because this is for our sake, we need to see that the amount of money that comes to research increases, not decreases. Let's not tie it into a proportion of the GDP. I think it needs to go up in absolute terms, not just in relative terms. There's going to be more problems in the world, all right? Not just one pandemic has shown us how connected we all are, but there will be more situations that we have to deal with. Climate change is something that affects all of us, and we can only solve some of these problems ourselves, right? Now, the government and all higher education regulatory bodies have endorsed the move towards the online education, and we need to invest in our institutions and our students, prepare them for it. We need better funding. I've already said that, I will just say that again. In today's newspaper, quite a coincidence, I get the Asian Age. It said that education sector has lost something like 6 million jobs all over India. Okay, the actual number is 5.4 million. In the last 2 years, it has come down. In the last year alone, it has come down by, by this amount. Now, all ad hoc appointments have stopped because there are no students, there are no classes, teachers have lost jobs. But now we have to come back. Will there be a recovery? I think that if we have the discipline to have smaller classes, more teachers will be needed. May not all be in permanent jobs, but it doesn't matter. Having a temporary job is better than having no jobs. So this is my appeal indirectly also to VC sir and to the registrar and others who are in positions. We need the discipline to have smaller classrooms, more interaction, and if we are going to have in the online mode, the attention that every student deserves means that again classes have to be somewhat small. the move online demands more from all of us, and the only way to deliver quality instruction would be to hire more teachers. The newspaper article, of course, says that there's cautious optimism as we come into the new academic year. I'm not entirely sure that I share that optimism, but I really wish that the fact that we move online doesn't see a reduction in the number of jobs. It sees the increase in the amount of education we are able to give the population of the country, and also therefore increases the number of jobs all over, especially in the education sector. Now, I should try to also keep one of the things that I strongly endorse, that lectures in the online mode should be short. So let me stop here now and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Ramaswamy, for your wonderful talk. And you have rightly pointed out many aspects of the online teaching. Although the SIAMS and the NPTEL and these things, it was started almost 3-4 years back, even maybe more. But during the pandemic and then afterwards, we are actually not only depending on this SIAM and then other platforms, and we individually, at the department level, the university level, and some institute level also, we are giving some education to the students. But many teachers, they are frustrated. They said they are not happy to teach because there is physically they cannot see the students. The eye contact is important, and they are not understanding whether the students is fully convinced their talk, or so they are complaining. But some students, they also happy. They said, okay, from their house they can attend the classes. So according to me, there is we cannot actually deny fully the physical presence in the class. The coming out from the home, and many students, they are learning not only from the classroom teaching, they can learn from their environment also while they are traveling from home to institute and then back. So there is some psychological, I think, phenomenon is happening. Many students now, it's almost more than a year, close to a year. So now it is very difficult to even push them to many schools. They are in Tripura. I am talking about the Agartala and Tripura. The government school is now open, but students now, they are very much reluctant to attend the school because they lost their this daily habits during this phenomenon. So that thing also, I think we will take some time to overcome these issues. And also for university level, this online teaching may be acceptable, and also, but the school levels, that is very important, and very important the people, those are actually living below the poverty level. For them, it is very important to arrange one mobile phone, even it is in 10,000 or 12,000 rupees.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So these are very important issues. Okay. So now this session is open for any questions. Audience, please ask some questions to Professor Ramaswamy. He will be happy to answer. I think.
There needn't be questions, I say. I mean, look, all of us are experts in this business, okay? That one of the things that online has made is that all of us are together.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Right, but you was mentioning that teachers are missing the face-to-face contact. This is true. Whether you are teaching at Harvard or whether you're teaching at at Hardwork School or whatever, it is true. You miss this contact. But one of the things that I also like to remember is that I remember my grandmother. When the phone used to ring in the old days, there was this phone which you had to lift up the black phone and then hold it to her ear. My grandmother was never convinced that it was the person who I said was on the other side. She used to always feel that that phone is some evil, not evil, but she never trusted that. And today, my daughter would prefer to send me a text message than to talk to me. I'm exaggerating, of course, but what I'm saying is that the way in which we internalized things like communicating on the telephone, I think as teachers, we've got to realize that our students are having the same problem, and this is just the best answer to a bad situation. But even when we come back to the regular classroom, if you're teaching 20 students in a class, allow 20 more to take it online. Those who cannot come to the class,
Yes.
we will allow them to take it online and write the examination. And we'll have to figure out a nice way of giving people access to the education and make that separate from giving them certification for the course. It's going to be up to us to come up with solutions. Nobody is going to do it for us, and then let us also forget that, or not forget, that what works in Harvard or in Cambridge or in Oxford doesn't work in Delhi or Agartala. We will have to come up with our own solutions and figure it out, because our students are going to be contributing to our society. Anyway.
Dr. Rashad?
Sir, I see one or two questions in the chat box. So, Shubhanda, can you read for sir?
Chat box. Yes. Yes, there is. Yes, Mr. Mohammad Josimuddin, he is asking two questions, sir. How we can restrict the cheating instances during online evaluation of students?
Yeah.
One question.
The other question is not relevant to the discussion. Yeah. So let me address this question. How do we restrict cheating? See, okay, first of all, we should know that there are some very fine softwares that are available, but it requires a lot of work on the part of the teacher. All right. Even in some things like Moodle and Google Forms, one can come up with an exam, and you can restrict cheating by giving a very limited time for the examination. That is possible. But I would like to point out that there's a wonderful software called Examiner, right? And this Examiner was created by faculty members in ISER Bhopal. Okay, so it is an indigenous software where you can give very nice examinations in all subjects, and particularly in things like mathematics and physics, where you think you don't want them to cheat. There are ways of doing this. So I think it's going to require some hard work on our part.
Okay.
But let me also say one more thing.
Okay.
I think that now, we've got to demand a little more from our students. See, it's only students who are, I feel that once a student realizes that this is the only education he or she is going to get, I think that the desire to cheat will go down, because I believe that students who come to a university come to learn.
Yeah.
I think that we've got to learn to trust our students a little more, and also tell them that you expect them to do certain things so that they will also rise to the challenge.
Okay, thank you. And his second question, this a bit of like personal things. He said, so far I have seen your profile. I found that you have some works on the natural effectiveness of mathematics in the biological sciences. Would you be pleased to suggest an effective test for impact of physical and psychological phenomena on cognition?
Okay. Now, okay, let me not spend too much time answering that. That article was written, 20 years ago on a different, in a different context. But I think the aspect is very important. Nowadays the effect of of this move online has had serious psychological problems, and our whole idea about reality is changing. So let me not say much more than this. It requires a different kind of a discussion.
Yeah. Another question, it was asked by Ratan Chandra Saha. He said, sir, why commercial online classes like Byju's and Vedantu are successful in reaching to the more students, but government organizations are not at much successful?
See, even before this move online, one could ask the same question: why are coaching institutes better, more popular with students? Because of the way in which we are evaluating them. Finally, we believe that there's one exam that we will give, and that exam has got to be passed. And so what Byju's or any of these other organizations do is basically to help you to crack things. Now, I think there's got to be a change in attitude. If there will, Byju's, etc., or Khan Academy. Khan Academy is actually in a different category.
Yeah.
Many coaching institutes are just helping you to crack an exam. We've got to get away from this mentality. All right, and when you realize that this is, that this pandemic. Incidentally, one thing that I didn't point out. Even at the beginning of the pandemic in March or April of 2020, many scientists have pointed out that even with a vaccine, with everything, this problem is not going to go away in 1 year. We can expect this disease to be with us for at least 5 years till 2020. Okay, they talked about 4 years, 2020 to 24. But one can see that this is going to stay for a while. When you realize that it's going to be a long-lived effect, I think, maybe I hope more than I think, that people will change their attitude.
Yeah, one more question by Mr. Ritesh. He said, wonderful lecture, sir. I was just wondering about what you really mean by National Education Policy, most probably NEP, has not been reformed after pandemic. What should be the reformative NEP, and what should be the role of teachers in this scenario?
Thank you very much, Ritesh. What I mean is the following. Before the pandemic, I'm talking very personally now. My savings, if I had 100 rupees, I was putting 50 rupees in mutual funds and stock market and this and that and the other. I'm a retired man, so I've got to worry a little about my savings, right? And 50% was in fixed deposit in a bank. Once the pandemic came, my way of thinking about this changed completely. I'm not so interested in, I have to worry about a variety of things. The pandemic forces you to change your view about very personal things, like I mean, I made a caricature of this, but of your, how you would put your savings. Or where will you go for a vacation? Before that, you were thinking you'll go anywhere. After the pandemic, you don't want to go more than 50 miles or 100 miles from your place. The pandemic has been so huge that it would be good for all of us to think about all important things in our life. Now, if you take the NEP just said increase your GER. It didn't tell us how to do it. Today, one way to increase the GER is to go online. That means you've got to be able to put in enough money into going online. Going online is not a simple matter. In our neighboring country of Bangladesh, one of the things that we are not always aware of is that the tuition fees has come down in all the colleges because students have to spend more money on data. Not one institution in India has reduced its tuition fees because students have to spend more money on data. Data has not become less expensive in our country. Data has become more expensive in our country. So what I'm saying is that there are lots of policy changes that have to happen when you realize that implementation of this new education policy is going to be, it's going to have different impacts and different implications because of the pandemic.
Yeah. So another question raised by Madam Tanuja. She is asking, do you mean by allowing students to attend online while you are teaching to students physically free of cost, free education but not certification?
You see, if somebody is listening to me, see today, right now, I see that there are 72 people listening to me. Right now, there's 72 people.
Yeah.
If there were 72,000, not that I'm not a YouTube influencer or, none of that going on here. But I'm just saying, what difference does it make? It's like a book. A book is printed once, it can be read by thousands of people in a library. Now, so Ms. Tanuja, I do mean that let them see it free of cost, but let them have the education. If they want a certificate, then you charge some money for it. This is what SWAYAM is doing, or this is what NPTEL is doing. But I really see that we should be able to give all our lectures to anybody. It would be nice.
Yeah, so I think there are the last questions asking by Vinit Shina, asking, sir, can you suggest some ways to make online class more interactive?
Yeah. Let me also just briefly say to the HOD of music that online education is not good for fine arts. But we actually had a panel discussion on how to teach fine arts. We had a sitar, a person who was a professor of sitar music, a professor of vocals, voice, and two professors of dance. They all came and they shared their methodology for teaching online. It's the best under a bad situation, but this is going to be a place where we have to be innovative. So let me just address what Vinit said. How do we make classes more interactive? The first thing is to make classes, in the teaching, the teaching intervals should be short. So you teach for 10 minutes, stop, have an online quiz, and some softwares allow it. On Moodle or on at IIT Delhi we have something called Impartus, and I can run short quizzes of ABCD, true, false, like that. I can give questions, and I can do that as many times during the class as I want. So students are able to interact a little more with me. I know when a subject is easy to understand, when it's more not so easy to understand. So this requires requires having good software. And that software, again, we have to rely on university administration to provide. So one thing is to have shorter segments. The second is to have, allowing in the software to have interactions and quizzes. And the third is to give the lecture before the lecture. That is the so-called flipped classroom. That is, record the lecture, let the students access it and see it, and during the actual interaction time, have it completely as a discussion. That is, don't be teaching and interacting at the same time, be only interacting, let the teaching happen earlier on. So these are some ways in which we could try to make it more interactive, but it requires the students also to participate and share their burden in this.
So, okay, just this is the last question, sir. One more question. There is asking by Dr. Chandra Mouli, and how to deal with the students of Jammu and Kashmir. I have one student admitted into MSc in computer science. He always take excuse saying net issues.
Yeah. Now this is a real problem for us, and it doesn't matter where the institution is, it matters where the student is, because the student is, yeah. They are not lying, right? First of all, we have to believe that they are true. In the lecture, there is 1 or 2 slides that I didn't spend too much time on because they were like tips for teaching. One of the things that a colleague of mine has found very useful is to just send a low resolution PDF of the entire lecture to the student by either WhatsApp or by email, and give them the, and maybe just make a voice recording, again, break it up into small portions so that the voice recording can also be sent to them. So if you look at the lecture, there will be, there is one particular part which says how to teach under low bandwidth conditions, and you'll find that useful over there.
Yeah. So, sir, it is, I think there is no questions from the audience. So, we are really happy, sir, to listen from you about this kind of challenges during online lectures, online educations. And I hope that our faculty members and also the faculty members in and around Tripura University, they will be benefited, and they will keep in mind that what you are mentioning there, and also statistical data, what you have shown during your slide presentation. So thank you very much, sir. We are
Pleasure.
Happy that actively in your busy schedule you arrange or sometimes for us.
Dr. Mazumdar, I'm a retired man, no busy schedule, no nothing. I have a lot of time, and this is a matter which actually both concerns me, and it's something on which I really would like all of us to cooperate, collaborate, and help each other as best as we can.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. And Dr. Hussain.
Thank you, sir. It was really nice and informative lectures, and hope everyone enjoyed. I just want to add one line regarding this cheating comments or questions by MD Jasimuddin. Actually, unfortunately, now students are mainly interested in scoring marks or cracking exams. So if we teacher can induce in their mind and divert it towards learning, that main aim is to learn, then they will automatically stop this kind of activity, what I understand. So we have to think on this issue. And during this pandemic, I think we have learned a lot of new things, because each and every issue we have some positive parts also. And here maybe online teaching, we should take it as a good thing, because Now, hybrid mode, what I understand, even if regular class started, we should continue hybrid mode so that we can reach what sir also mentioned, the distance students, and also we can record, we can share more information so that later they can see and then we can interact. So it's a good thing, good opportunity that we can learn from the pandemic. So it's good thing, what I understand. So thank you very much, sir. And hopefully in near future, we will have you in such kind of activity. Thank you,
I'm going
sir.
to remind you of that, Harshad.
And stay healthy, stay safe, sir. And we will keep in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. And please share your PPT, maybe by mail to me. I will share it to the participants.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you very much. Yeah. So session is closed, declare closed. Okay. Thank you.
No, sure.